Let me see your hands up. And show yourself out if you came to see something average. We came as a family, fucking industry standard. I'd rather drown together than leave my fam behind. Without them, I wouldn't have shit. I hope you can feel the magic. I'm living life grounded, steady finding the balance. Raised by warriors, ready for any challenge. You hype on the small swells, we were born to ride mavericks. This is the turning of the tides. There I was, 6 years old, my eyes wide open. I saw the storm, city swallowed up by the ocean. Humanity fucked up, look at the world broken. I want to see the borders open. I wrote this music, it was something I found hope in. My generation finally seeing the web woven. Everything is connected, my generation was chosen to guide the way to the light. And this is our movement, walk on roads paved of every great leader of every revolution. We doing it our way. And this is a celebration. If love is resistance, resisting is in our nature. We'll show up by the thousands, people of every nation will summit the highest mountain to prove to them we can make it. It starts right here, right now. Every one of you has light within, now is the time to shine out. And hands up if you feel it too. The music is a movement, it's proof if you feel it moving you. Because the power of the people is more powerful than people in power. I believe that this will be our finest hour. Thank you.
So my name is Hank Rogers. I'm here to moderate this panel as if they need moderation. My background is when I was 17 years old, we were in New York, we were students, and we went on strike to stop the war in Vietnam. And I feel that that time has come again when the youth need to rise up and stop something. And this time it's climate change. So I've got the so my children sometimes call me the Dos Equis guy because I used to have my hair back and I kind of look like the Dos Equis. So I've got the Dos Equis right here. Their names start with X in case people don't know what. Anyway, we have Shuteskat and Shihe Bastide and Slater, and Jerica, and rather than me introduce them, I would like them to introduce themselves. You got a minute each.
My name is Shuteskat Tanatiu. I'm 19 years old. I was born in Boulder, Colorado. Family's from Mexico. Yeah.
Hi everyone, my name is Shia Bastida. I am 17 years old. I am part of the Fridays for Future movement, and I am also from Mexico.
Yeah. Wait a minute.
Hi, my name is Slater, and I'm a filmmaker and activist.
So, all right. So I'd like to know a little bit about how did you get to where you are? I mean, what moved you? What pissed you off? What was it?
Back like 20 some years before I was born, I guess not even that long, 8 years before I was born. In 1992 in Maui, Hawaii, my mom started an accredited high school called the Earth Guardian School. And it began to lay the foundation for everything that I'm a part of and involved in today. And it was this idea and this vision that there was a deep need, more so than to tackle any one individual issue, to build a platform for the younger generation to be able to utilize their voice and their passion to create the change that the world needs to follow through and be a part of. And so that took them across the United States on a tour to 29 different states, pulling up to conferences and events. And it was led by the young people. You know, my grandpa was driving the school bus, and my mom was like helping run all the logistics. But the young people were the ones that were out at the forefront of this conversation, talking and speaking and leading the way in the United Nations and so on. And that's where my parents met, you know, on that tour. And so I came into the world with like this foundation already really powerfully laid for me on the side of my mother and then on the side of my father, who's Mexica, indigenous Mexican, having already traveled all over the world to represent Mexico at different United Nations forums, to represent indigenous communities, spirituality, culture, and the environment. So I was like kind of this like perfect storm that I was born into, and the first 10 years of my life were ceremony and just a deep dive into my cultural identity, understanding who I am, where my ancestors came from, the struggle of colonization that we overcame to be able to carry on and hold on to our language, our songs, our cultures. And so I think that context, that identity that I had at a very young age made it very automatic for myself to be very inspired and passionate about these issues. And for us as Indigenous people, it wasn't even about being an environmentalist or, being a political activist. For us, it was like our existence relies upon the health of our water, our communities, our people, our women, our children, our air. And so all that was very innate. And when I saw Leo's documentary, The 11th Hour, all the visuals of the crisis our planet was experiencing, I was about 6, 7 years old at the time. The visuals of that crisis were like thrown in my face, and I was like very heartbroken. From that moment on, it catapulted me into like this crazy trajectory of involvement, of representing, of speaking, of fighting at a community level to resist fossil fuel infrastructure and beyond, to getting involved in these lawsuits against the federal government and speaking at the United Nations and building a community around me and being able to tap in with other young leaders that have the same vision.
Okay, you're going to have more.
There you go.
You're going to have more time later. Xie.
It actually surprises me how much we have in common. I am also indigenous from Mexico. I'm Otomi Toltec. My dad and my mom also met through the environmental movement. And my dad also represents indigenous cosmology in UN conferences. So it is the perfect mix for you to know where you come from. Know that we are the earth. The earth gives us so much. Why don't we give back? What scares me, what's pissing me off, is that in the Bronx, 17% of adults have asthma, which is 10% higher than the national average. Right now, in 2017, we had 18 million climate refugees. In 2015, I was displaced from my community because of drought and flooding. Just in this year, we had 700,000 acres burned by wildfires. Some of the 60 biggest wildfires that we've had. And I cannot believe that that is my present, and I am not going to let that be my future. And that is why I'm involved, because I've been affected by the climate crisis. And indigenous people have been affected by the climate crisis because they've seen how it's been deteriorating for decades now. And now we're paying attention to it because it's affecting every level. But it's been affecting the lower level for so many years. So we are here, and we are telling you that we're not going to stop until the climate crisis is reversed. And you can count on us for that, and we're counting on you to join us.
So Slater, you've already introduced your history, so I'm just going to skip to the next question, which is where do we go from here? What are you going to do from here? What is the change that you need everyone's help with?
Well, I think we all know in this room that we're in a very particular moment in time when we realize that we have no more time, or very little of it, in order to change the way that we live and interact with each other in the society in which we create and are part of every day. One of the biggest things for me, though, is trying to figure out how to bring this story and this understanding that we all sometimes, I think, take for granted and bring it to people who don't have the luxury to be in these rooms. I live in a very rural community of farmers who find these conversations either difficult or, part of a left-wing conversation that is somehow stepping around their voices and the way that they need to be a part of this conversation. And so I think one of the most important things to do right now is to figure out how we can meet people where they are, how we can figure out where we connect as people so that everyone feels like this is their movement, that everyone feels like this is an opportunity for them to truly create a better world where they have better air, better jobs, more innovation, cleaner air and water, where our relationships to each other are viewed as something that is more valuable than profit. So for me, where I want to go with this and where I want to go with my filmmaking and with, this documentary I made is this idea that we need to meet people where they are, that we need to, yes, there is no time, but we need everyone on board. We need everyone to be a part of this if we are going to truly change everyone and bring them together so that no one is left behind, so that we raise all boats. If people can connect on that human level together, then this isn't frightening or something that's outside of their realm of experience. It's a way that we can enrich all of our lives.
Shuteska?
Yeah, I was gonna say, on that point, thank you, Slater. I appreciate all the work you do. You're a freaking badass. And just on that tip too, is like, how do we, especially the last couple of years, my question has been, how do we redefine the conversation and the narrative of the climate crisis, and more so of the climate movement? Because it needs to be grand enough, inclusive enough, diverse enough, inviting enough, so that the masses that need to be involved in this conversation tap in. And so as far as like the project that we're working at for the future is, how do we build a comprehensive back end to all this, to the strikes, to these school walkouts, to these documentaries that are being released? How do we build a back end that tangibly reverses the climate crisis and engages every level of society? And a recent study came out that said there's 71 million people in the US that would give $10 a month to reverse the climate crisis. So we're launching a company called Now that builds a subscription service to reverse the climate crisis. On the back end, we're gonna be working and partnering with a handful of different people to match this goal of planting over 1 trillion trees in the next 10 years. Which is the most, in combination with a couple other things, it's the quickest, most cost-effective, and most comprehensive plan to reverse the climate crisis in a very short period of time. But beyond just the $10 a month subscription, which is something most people in the United States, most people in these conversations could plug into and tap into very simply, we want to work to create to really break down and reinvent on the front end the whole story around the climate movement. And what that means is building a plugin, a carbon reduction plugin that taps into every facet of society, from ticketed events like conferences to concerts to sporting events to product collaborations, shoes, working with the top culturally relevant fashion designers and artists to create a network and a community around the world that is utilizing this platform to have drawdown and have carbon sequestration as ubiquitous as transacting currency. So everything we do is actually tapping into drawdown. So I'm really excited to be launching this, and y'all can come talk to me more about that in the future as well. But that's the project. It's called Now. We're launching in September. We're really excited to link up with these other young leaders as well to have it actually owned by the youth movement and bring a council of young leaders from all these different organizations to help steer the direction of this company, so we can be building the momentum, getting people and bodies on the streets, and then move from streets into solutions. There. Cool.
So what we're doing right now is, and as you have seen, we've been striking. And why do we strike? We strike because that's our last resort. Striking is when you are completely fed up and you have to change the system. And who is regulating what's going on? And just a little history, on March 15, we had 1.6 million students striking. On May 24th, we had 1.9 million students. But there's 1 million students alone in the New York City public school system, which means we are not striking as much as at the scale that we need. And that is why we're calling adults to join us. And we also know that striking is not going to solve the climate crisis. It's just impossible that a kid skipping school is going to translate into solving this issue that is so large that we cannot even fathom. But striking is going to enable the political mechanism that can resolve the climate crisis. It's going to enable the ethical mechanism that can solve the climate crisis. And it's going to enable the generational mechanisms that can solve the climate crisis. And that is what we're hoping for, and that is what we are doing. And in New York City, I am also training activists, because you know how many activists we have in New York City? 4. That is not enough at all. You can probably name the 3 activists that you know around the world, and that's probably all there is right now. But we have to expand that so that the youth movement has more leaders than followers. And that is why we're training activists. In New York City, I'm training over 35 activists on how to testify at City Hall. You have the power to do that. on how to engage in nonviolent direct action, on how to lobby politicians. And the most important thing is, and I've said this before, we cannot vote yet, but we strike today and we vote tomorrow.
Yeah. Well, I would like to add to that. I do think that striking has a direct effect. If you go on strike and your parents are the ones who want you to go to school, basically there is a little bit of a conversation that needs to happen there. That is a conversation that needs to happen across the country with youth and with the adults, because we are sending them to school to study for a world that isn't going to exist because we're screwing it up. So we study to get into this world, and we're ruining that world. So before we go through trying to teach them how to live in our world, let's fix that world. Okay, so the name of this panel is Eco-Warriors Take on Climate Justice. So now we're going to talk about our take on climate justice. Anybody want to go first? I'm going to open it up so that this part is going to be conversational rather than speeches, if that's at all possible.
I can go.
Go.
So, you cannot address the climate crisis if you don't address social justice. And that's as simple as it gets. And that's why I'm a climate justice activist. Because communities, locally and globally, marginalized communities, communities of color, are being the most affected by this crisis. I like to think about how if the world were to just burn on one day and everything was wiped out, if it was equally done to all of us, that's equality. But that's not what's happening. This is unjust because this is affecting some people first, and those people are not heard. Those people are not at the table. And those people, that person is me as well, and some of us here. And the type of support that we need is for you to uplift our voices and our stories so that the narrative around climate change changes. We need a cultural change, and a cultural change can only be achieved through narrative change. And that's why the stories of marginalized communities have to be brought to the front, and they have to be talked about. And what I realized is that the story that you have, your climate story, is one of the most effective things to change people's minds. The data has been there, but it's so impactful that it desensitizes people. If you keep reading news of the climate crisis every day, you're just not going to want to look again. Has anyone experienced that? Yeah, I'm sure that there's more and more news that come in about the fires in Siberia, the deforestation in the Amazon, the melting of the Arctic and Greenland, and we just don't want to look at it because it's too much. And that's why we have to bring personal stories of people who are being affected. Because when you meet someone like that, and when you know that they're talking from the heart, and what they want is a better future for everybody, that's when your heart is going to open up.
I think with that too, we are the most connected generation in history. We are the largest generation in history. We are the most diverse generation in history. And I think just inherently within the way our identities, like we're understanding our identities in a way that is far more intersectional than I think any generation before us has. We're understanding that we are a part of so many more groups, communities, than was ever talked about before. So in this conversation around climate change and the climate crisis, like that is an umbrella that reaches out and touches everything that we care about, from economic justice to racial justice to gender equality. Like it literally is zooming in and affecting so many different realms that we're all tapped into. And if you look at the forefronts of all these social movements beyond just the climate justice movement, from Parkland to LGBTQIA+ to Black Lives Matter, you know, there are young people at the forefronts of these movements, from Standing Rock and indigenous communities resisting to protect their homes and their water. There's young people at the forefront of this. And I think the youth-led aspect of this movement is what is going to drive this idea of diversity within these movements. I think that when we talk about what is our take on climate justice, it's like this is our opportunity where our generation is actually redefining what that looks like. We are redefining what these movements can be. And we have lots of beautiful examples of, you know, many people in this room who have been with their hands in the earth on the front lines for many, many, many years. And we are learning from that, and we are putting our own spin on it. And I think that's what's valuable. And you can even just see it with the voices here of these young people who they're like, we recognize that this is bigger than just the environment. This is bigger than just, we need renewable energy. It's a lot more than that. The conversation is a lot deeper than that. And I think we represent that with the work that we do, with the communities that we're from. And it's a really beautiful moment to really recognize that the climate crisis is rooted, the systemic oppression that happens through the climate injustice is rooted in many other deep wounds that create many other levels of oppression in our society, from white supremacy to capitalism and patriarchy. And like, if you look at ancient indigenous systems of living in balance with the earth, you know, there's these conversations and ideas of permaculture. That's not like a new discovery. Like, our people have been living this way forever, respecting the balance between men and women and uplifting the matriarchy. That's been something we've been living in practice in our communities for generations. So a lot of it is remembering the old ways and balancing that with the development of technology and knowledge and all these different things, and balancing it with the old knowledge and the old wisdom that we actually have to relearn and remember and unlearn a lot of bullshit that isn't serving us.
Well, I'd just like to say the marginalized and the how can I say, the injustice that is actually the injustice that we people our age, the older people, are dropping down on the youth. I mean, we had it wonderful. We had the wonderful years where the weather was wonderful and nice, and here we are trashing everything, and now it's just like, oh well, it's time for me to go. It's not my problem, it's your problem. So I think it's very unfair that we should just take all of the garbage that we've created through our existence and then give it to our kids and say, okay, you guys clean it up. I think that before we go, we need to clean up what we've created, and that is what we need to do. That is what our generation needs to do, and that's the justice that needs to be served.
That's right.
I mean, anything I say, I feel like it is merely adding to this conversation and what has been saying before of everyone on this panel of climate justice is such an impactful and profound idea, because it's beyond this idea of climate change. It's making us truly bring everyone up. And if we're going to adapt, if we're going to survive together as a species, we need to start treating each other better, and we need to start listening to each other and bringing everyone to the table. And that's why I think the climate movement, why the climate conversation has been so intriguing to me for almost my entire life, is because this idea of us embracing each other as human beings, and that recognizing that if we are going to survive as a species, we have to come together as a species, that we are the same. And I'm not saying that we're moving forward and we're forgetting, ways that we've treated each other, or pain or suffering. It's all part of that. It's all part of this embracing of each other and loving each other. And I think that's an important thing to remember, is like, as we move forward, we need to remember that so many friends of mine have this actually tattooed on themselves, is this idea of love as a movement, that is what we're fighting for, that we want to be the kind of people who live in this world where we do treat each other with fairness and kindness and love. And I mean, you guys got this shit on lock, but yes, we need to remember that.
Okay, so we have about 10 minutes left, and I'd like to invite 10 questions from the audience. So each question, because we only have 10 minutes, I want 20 minutes for the question and 20 seconds for the question and 40 seconds for the answer. So who's first? Somebody with a mic, choose people.
Hi, John Bellamini, Center for the Greater Good. I'd like to know what you need today from us to be successful.
We need people to come on board to help us with everything from finances to expanding our team to, really looking at the rollout of what these next years look like and how can we build that collaboratively. There's so many brilliant people in the room, and we need your minds, we need your networks, we need your money, we need all that. So come talk to us afterwards about what that can really look like. Yeah. Thank you.
And adding on to that, that is the question that we get the most. How can we help? The first question that we get is, what are you doing? And then how can we help, which is great. And how can you help is, you have a network, you have a platform. You can uplift our voices through it. And I'm really happy that in this 4 days, I've heard that in every single conversation and panel, I've heard young people are doing so much. And yeah, we are, but we do need resources because we have not had the chance to get there. And that's what we need you.
Oh, sorry.
Is this turned on?
Yeah. You're next.
2 words, beautiful, inspiring. Thank you. I just want, we live in a complex system, and everything you're saying is essential and core, but there are many issues, including things like endocrine disruptors that are going to affect your generation, toxic waste, and I suppose it's not really a question. It's a call to be aware of the whole system. Soil restoration is core. Cleaning up toxic waste. Being aware of the freight train coming straight at you, endocrine disruptors, is important.
Okay. I'm going to answer that question. So if you know what the issues are, and you obviously do, then it's up to you to do something about them.
Also, if we had more than 45 minutes, we could dive into the whole picture, but 45 minutes. Thank you so much for adding that. We'll definitely keep that in mind. Appreciate you.
Going fast. I'm not on.
Try again.
I'm on. It's Deanna from Plastic Pollution Coalition. So my big question for you guys is, what do you want to see happen from this right now? What would you like, if we could put a stake in the ground while we're all gathered here today, and there's something, I don't know, a statement, what would you like to see?
I would like your networks to declare climate emergency.
There you go. How hard can it be? Right there.
So thank you for all the work that you're doing. So I just wanted to offer up another thing. Our Children's Trust came to the American Sustainable Business Council, said we filed this case, Juliana versus U.S. We need a business brief. So we filed and helped to write a business brief with them in order to support the case. And then we reached out to the business community to sign on. So then they came back and said, we need to do that in Washington State. Do you have business leaders in Washington State? So business leaders. So what we're asking as another piece of this that we were asked to do is to don't be afraid to add your brand and your company onto the list of companies. We have another sign on so we can come back to you as the cases move forward. Put the brand on the line now.
Ask your question. What do you want them?
They're answering that. I'm just offering the opportunity for action that we were asked to do by our Children's Trust.
Thank you. Next question. Questions, please.
Okay, here's a question. First of all, you guys are awesome, and we're all going to get behind you. My question is, in your political analysis and the work you're doing, how much of there is a discussion around a lot of you running for office? Because there's also such a need for us to rebuild our country, and so I'm wondering how all of what you're doing is fabulous, but I'm just wondering, where is this going in terms of like actual political action and that conversation in your movements? Thank you.
My boy, if anybody lives in Orange County, my boy San Clemente, he's running for San Clemente City Council. He's 19 years old, climate and social justice activist. Vote for him. And I think we need more and more young people to step up to the plate to run for office. I'm not really trying to be a politician. I'm trying to rap right now and do more of this and start a company. But there are so many members of our generation that are going to step up to the plate, so vote for them.
Yeah.
And support them. Donate to their campaigns, all that.
You got a question?
So, is this on? Quick question. 1 year from now, where are we, what are you doing, and what's happened?
So I think that...
I don't want to be back here.
No.
Can you turn this on? I don't want to be back here again talking about the same panel.
So,
Okay, what's happened?
It's also important to remember 1 year from now, we're going to be seniors in high school. Like, we're still kids. So that's what's going to happen. But 1 year from now, we want to see someone who we want in office. 1 year from now, we want to see, Gen Z and millennials are 37% of people who can vote in 2020. And 1 year from now, we want to see all of your projects that have been presented, we want to see them in action and thriving. And 1 year from now, we want to be here telling you about what we've accomplished.
All right. There you go, yeah. And that one over here? What happened to the mic? Here. Here you go. Here. Here.
Kids are right. I would vote for any of you. I have a really good announcement. On September 19th through the 21st, the Nobel Peace Laureates are meeting in Mexico. And on the 20th, I just found out they're going to be pausing and have an entire ceremony in support of what you're doing. So if it's good enough for the Nobel Peace Laureates to stand up and support you, it's good enough for all of us. Thank you, and we'll be there.
Question?
How much money do you need, and how do we get it to you?
Yes. So I'm gonna have my team, Marlo, raise your hand, and Mama, raise your hand. So this is the Earth Guardian team right here. You can please, please stand up. Anybody interested in coming to help support financially or with any other things with the work that we're doing, please come and talk to us. We'll be here throughout the rest of the weekend. We need a good amount of money to help support the next couple of years of growth, and so we need, I think, for the company, we need $2 million for the rest of 2019, and the Earth Guardians, we need $1 million for 2020 budget, and that's to launch and roll it out. $2 million for the company and $1 million for the nonprofit for Earth Guardians. So hit us up.
And also, Earth Guardians is one part of our Climate Strike Coalition. So it's important to know that there's 7 youth groups who are working together and joining together in the strikes. So definitely support Earth Guardians. I'm part of Earth Guardians too. Woo! But there's 0 Hour, there's Sunrise Movement, Extinction Rebellion, Future Coalition, Fridays for Future, and they all want your help.
What's the combined budget for everybody, for all 7 groups?
50 mil.
I think that is not a question for the youth because they haven't done it yet. They're just getting started. But I'm talking about you haven't spent $50 million. What I'm saying is you haven't spent $50 million yet.
So in New York City, we have a large budget. I'm not going to say how much, but this is the point. In New York City, we have a focal point because Greta's coming and the UN summit is happening. But that support is not being seen nationally or globally. So we really need to do it in a strategic way that is not only supporting one focal point, but the movement altogether.
So there's been discussions about how to get resources to all the groups. And I would just say not all those details are worked out. And I think it's important to know there'll be need for support up till the strike and then afterwards for mobilization. So maybe what we could do is anybody that's interested in being part of a fundraising drive, we could take some names and collaborate and get in behind this. Instead of coming up with the answers right on the stage, we can do this immediately afterwards. But don't leave if you can commit resources. Commit the resources and we'll help figure it out.
Please, thank you.
We got one last question here. All right, we got a young person in the back, really?
So I know you mentioned the strikes, but how could one who is part of this youth get involved? What other ways?
Yeah, so we have groups everywhere. And for example, in New York City, we have committees, and each committee is composed of individuals who can plug in through our website, and you can just sign up and we will reach out to you. And this is being replicated all over the country. So the easiest way to get involved is to go to our Instagram or our website and just talk to us, and we want you there.
And just on the Earth Guardian tip, Earth Guardians is facilitating community action all over the world to do work kind of in conjunction with these strikes, and then also further building out that back end. And we have Earth Guardian crews in 60 countries. If you're trying to plug in, start one here in Aspen or whatever your hometown is, connect with one that's nearby you. Just go to earthguardians.org and sign up to start like that. We have all kinds of tools and resources that we're going to be helping distribute that for sure. And I think also we should just, anybody who's interested in talking to me and Shea about funding and stuff, like I'm gonna be out on that patio with my team and Shea, so come chop it up with us like right after this and let's talk.
Don't you have an app or something?
We have an app as well. We have all kinds of stuff. Come talk to us.
Okay, just to wrap up, so to the adults in the world, either get behind the youth or get out of the goddamn way.